everyone. So I have been doing a series of videos on the sun signs and the people who love these sun signs. And so now I'm doing the sign Libra. And as you can see, I have a few cards propped up because these cards represent some of the qualities of Libra. Now the Justice card on the left there is actually connected specifically to Libra. And I picked a card from my new deck, Keepers of the Light. I'll show you this again, which I just had. I just love this picture too. That's why I take every opportunity to show it. And I picked Mother Mary because the theme or the keywords are love and peace. And it's said in the small letters underneath, let go of the need to be right, choose peace. Mother, healing is possible at this time. Well, forget about that part, but I choose peace. And then you have the Six of Swords on the right, and that also is a card about choosing peace. And it's actually, because it's the swords, it's dealing with air signs. I don't know if it's connected specifically to Libra, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was because of what the card represents. And yes, Libra is a cardinal air sign. And as a cardinal sign, Libra is one of 4 signs that is considered the executive. Okay, so you have Libra, Aries, Cancer, and Capricorn. They represent each of the 4 elements. And so Libra is a sign that actually, even though you may not think so right away, is really a mover and shaker. They tend to like to give orders, not to get orders or take orders. And so if you think about Librans, or if you are a Libran, you will understand this. The cooperative element of Libra is present, and I was going to say it's all a facade, which is not true because it is present. Librans like to be agreeable. But there is, I feel like there's always lurking in the background a desire to be in a position of power. And not necessarily to manipulate other people, but so that they, have their own autonomy. And this is kind of like that paradox, because, or maybe it's a conflict is more the proper term, because it's very hard to maintain your autonomy without trying to manipulate other people to, well, I shouldn't say manipulate, but trying to control other people, because sometimes other people want the same things, and so that's where the power clashes begin. And I think that it's fair to say that Librans in relationships can get into these sorts of sticky wickets where they are, battling it with another person. Now, if they get involved with another cardinal sign, this can especially be the case. This, if they get involved with an Aries, and that is their opposite sign, or a Cancer, which some may gravitate towards, or a Capricorn. But sometimes it's more subtle. And I want to just go back, though, for a second, because I want to talk about, what I see with Libra in terms of their basic personality traits. Libra is ruled by Venus, so there's always that aesthetic influence or urging. There's always this aesthetic drive that they have. They're always looking to make life beautiful in whatever way works for them. For a lot of Librans, their own appearance is paramount, and they will do whatever it takes to make themselves look as beautiful as possible. The same applies to the people that they are attracted to, and this is where sometimes Librans get into trouble. where they are too in love with the externals, and they, do not realize that, what's that saying? You can't judge a book by its cover. Well, Librans will judge a book by its cover sometimes. And yes, this is a broad brush approach to talking about different signs, because that's all I have. And these are like kind of the key qualities that may be present in more Librans than not, And so I think that these things can be helpful, because other people trying to understand, why is their partner so seemingly obsessed with, color schemes, and this has to look this way, because not everybody's like that. So we have to understand that for them, it's all about balance, okay? And balance also applies to the aesthetics. If they feel that, the shirt and the pants don't match, if you're wearing something that they think is not harmonious, they might let you know, and they might be really, seriously thrown off by even other people's fashion choices. And you may say, God, that is so shallow, but that is the Venus influence at work. What I feel, though, is the most important thing to talk about is the tendency for Librans to be too much what other people want them to be. Now, why does this happen? Well, Libra is the ruler of the 7th house of partnership, okay? So partnership means that we are not just expressing and experiencing life through our own set of eyes, but with another person. So they're always conscious of wanting to be cooperative, and there to be harmony so that they can maintain partnership. So whenever a situation arises, they don't see things just through their own eyes. They want that kind of agreement from the other person. And it doesn't have to be just the lover. It can be in even in a business sense, because the 7th house can rule your relationship with clients. But even, I would say, I would extend it to any relationship, whether it's a friendship, whatever. Librans want to appear agreeable, and they also want acceptance from other people. So when that sometimes doesn't happen, because let's face it, unless you're a complete empty shell, you're going to sometimes do and say things that, counter other people's worldviews. In those types of situations, Librans can get very, rattled when other people take offense or do not agree with them, or maybe even reject them for something. So this is something that Librans have to wrestle with, because in the shadow aspect of Libra, and every sign has its shadow, it can lead them to excessive conformity, but what I'm really looking for is the word that means excessive compromise, and really not living their own truth, especially in romantic relationships. This is where it seems to manifest the most. And so they can get into codependent relationships very easily, where they are always trying to garner the approval of others. And it seems to me that when people try to do that, that life, the universe, will keep throwing at them more and more disapproval. And that as soon as they embrace their authenticity and choose to live in their truth, that they will find more acceptance. I think, because I have noticed just in my own private observations of Librans that I know, that I've come across, that more than a couple of them seem to have drama attached to their lives. And I feel this is because whatever you resist persists. And so if you are afraid of stepping on other people's toes, and you're always trying to get other people to think you're okay and things like that, it seems like it gets withheld. And also in personal relationships, I've noticed that Librans tend to become way too enmeshed in the other person, and even maybe even take on their personality, or their become another version of them and lose themselves. And the irony, I don't know if that's the correct term, of that is that when you lose yourself and you try to morph into somebody else to appease them, they will likely start to have less respect for you because there's no contrast. There's nothing different than them. And they don't see you as authentic. They don't see you as genuine. And they don't trust that what you say you really mean. Sometimes that's another point that I was trying to make, is that sometimes Librans may come across as insincere because of this tendency to do that. Now, I don't want to bash Librans for 20 minutes, because actually Libra is a sign that I think can have a lot of success in life. In addition to being sometimes physically attractive, now sometimes this can be on the ascendant where you see this played out, but actually, I mean, from people that I have met, a lot of Librans are physically attractive, Sun in Libra, and they can use that to their benefit, but they're also very gracious and very, graceful. And so they tend to be very sought out as social partners, as people to socialize with, because Librans are extremely, they tend to be very polite. They have the social graces. They're not rough around the edges like some people are. Aries, even Sagittarius. I'm a Sagittarius, but I mean the people that are much more, rough around the edges is probably not a good word, but just less interested in, going along to get along. And they come across as more combative, let's put it that way. But Libra is the exact opposite. And so people feel that there's a sense of, I can't think of the word that I'm looking for. I was going to say classiness. Saying the word classy is so unclassy. Let's face it. Classy. But something along those lines, refined. That's what I was looking for. Elegant, okay? So they add a touch of elegance, whether it be their dress, their mannerisms, their speech patterns. And this is something that other people notice and appreciate, because we have a whole range of personality and behavioral traits in society, don't we? And so etiquette, just everything, being kind versus being right. And that was what I had picked from Mother Mary, letting go of the need to be right, choosing peace. This is how Librans roll. And if you're somebody like an Aries person, and even like Sagittarius, and you're like, don't you have an opinion? You're always like agreeing with everyone, don't you, I don't believe that you always are in agreement with me, and you try to goad them into being different than they are. You're not accepting them as they are. Now, I will say, and I've said this before, I've said you have to accept people where they are. But I also believe that you can help them to evolve, okay? We all can help each other to evolve. That doesn't mean we have to just tolerate bad behavior. With Libra, it's not so much bad behavior usually as it is neurotic behavior, because sometimes they're very indecisive, and that can really irritate people who are much more able to do things, like a Scorpio or an Aries, who can just bam, do things and not think about it a gazillion times. And the other area is in seeing all sides of a situation. That can drive people nuts too, because Libran people tend not to be opinionated. Okay, so it's like they can see all sides of a situation. So they're perfect politicians, and a lot of them probably, they get into the law, which, a lot of lawyers become politicians, which, makes a lot of sense to me based on, my opinions of lawyers. And I'm just kidding for any lawyers out there. But you know what I'm saying is that the ability of a lawyer to see multiple sides of a situation is advantageous, because they can take on a client, who just committed a heinous crime and defend them to the death, and then they can, deal with somebody who really is innocent. But the thing about it is, sometimes when you're having a discussion with somebody, you want to know where they stand. And or even if you're like, hey, isn't this a cool outfit or something like that? And they're like, yeah, everything is like great, but you never get the sense that they're really being honest. And that's, maddening to other people who really are looking for that exchange of ideas. But like I said, on the flip side, they can be very gracious hosts and guests, and people tend to invite them back. They may not invite back the Aries or the Sagittarian, because they were too combative, they were too controversial, or the Aquarius person, for being too much of an oddball or something, So, Librans tend to be very easy to take, easy to get along with. And that can be very attractive to a lot of people, maybe the majority of people. The thing is that Librans, when they're not living authentically, they can veer into passive-aggressive behavior, because they are cardinal signs at the end of the day. So they do like to call their own shots, and they do like to forge their own trails. And when they feel hamstrung, when they're in a situation where they don't like what's happening, but they don't have the balls to really go out and say how they feel, that can lead them to, and sometimes it can be on the verbal level of, kind of like a little bit of, I was going to say snark, but snark might be too obvious. They may, passive-aggressive behavior sometimes escapes people initially, forgetting to do something for another person, or, where it's just like very subtle, but it screws other people up. Or, even like cheating to me is passive-aggressive behavior. So if you're with a Libran person, if you're watching for your partner and they cheated, and you're saying, why did this person cheat? They were so nice to me, blah, blah, blah. Maybe they had some beef with you and they didn't have the guts to come out and tell you, because they fear conflict, okay? And when you fear something, it comes back tenfold. So if a Libran person is watching this, learn how to, just express yourself. There's a book called Nonviolent Communication, and I did look at it. I don't know if it's, I always get a little bit nervous of these things, because, I'm not into psychobabble, and sometimes they, like they say, well, what I feel is what, when I'm hearing you say, and all these things. And that's not, to me, that's not normal communication. So if it's going to be like that, then it's going to be contrived, and it's not going to be received well by the other person, in my opinion. I'm fully aware that this is just my opinion, and I just glanced at the book. I checked it out from the library. I probably didn't give it a good shot. So you might want to try that and see if that helps. Because being honest doesn't mean you have to like tear somebody a new one, If you have a Libran child, teach them how to express themselves authentically. Don't shame them for when they're young for having an opinion contrary to what you want them to have. And I think I mentioned to Aries parents of Aries children about not using physical punishment, because Aries has a tendency towards that kind of physical aggression, and that would make it, a gazillion times worse. Well, I mean, I don't believe in, any kind of physical, quote unquote, discipline, which is, to me, it's undisciplined to hit. And I think that a lot of Librans agree with this. But for parents of Librans, reasoning, because they have a great mind, they're air signs. Reasoning with them, people mock reasoning. There is nothing wrong with reasoning whatsoever. Obviously, it has to be age appropriate. But, really kind of engaging children in behavior that they're doing that is counterproductive is, to me, the most civilized and best way to handle any situation. Because, if somebody pisses me off, or somebody pisses you off, if they say something, what if they're deliberately mean? Do you go and hit them upside the head? No, unless you're completely nuts, and it's considered battery. So why is it not considered battery when people physically discipline children? It's getting to that point, but there are still a lot of people who think, oh yeah, you have to hit children. And so the point I'm trying to make is that of all the signs, Libra is one of the most affected by that kind of punishment. That would be very, very traumatic. And also, think about your own patterns with your own, if you're, in a marriage or a committed partnership and you're raising a Libran child, consider how you talk to your partner as well as your child. Are you agreeable? Are you, abusive in your language? So these kind of things are very important because they're very sensitive to discord. Doesn't mean you have to pretend that everything is just fluffy and fuzzy unicorns. It's about just, really understanding that, Librans, Pisces, there are certain signs that are extra affected by discord, in harmonious situations. And that can kind of stay with them for the rest of their lives. So you should definitely watch out for that. If a Libra person is watching, also, in terms of justice, what kind of, what constitutes justice? Understand that there's a cosmic justice. Don't always try to make things correct on the physical plane. And this comes out, I think, a lot with activism, because a lot of, I feel like a lot of Librans are socially, politically connected, or at least interested in that. And so a lot of times people think, oh, we have to help, there's this inequality, I was going to say such social justice warriors, okay? And that's really, that's kind of like a derisive term, but definitely a mentality that I could see a Libran taking. Realize that we are not our race and gender, sexual orientation, social class. These are external things. Be very, very wary of anyone who tries to emphasize those qualities that and tell you to identify with those things, because I don't think that they have your best interests at heart. Until people realize that they transcend, and I have a couple of those. I'm a woman. I'm a person of color. I have a couple of those things I could throw into the hat, but I refuse to use those things as excuses for my life, and I encourage other people not to as well, and not to be influenced by those people who do that, because they first of all, I don't believe that they care about other people. I think that they're promoting their own agendas, and that's just my opinion. But in terms of how it affects the worldview of a Libra, they want everything to be fair, and I don't want people to suffer when they see inequality in the world, because you know what? That's why this is the material world and it's not heaven. But there's contrast. That's what they talk about in law of attraction, contrast. And contrast is our growth in whether it's in our personal life or what we see in society. That's how we grow. When we see what's wrong and we see where we want to go. we can, if everything was all just on the surface good, then there would be no growth, because there would be nothing to, get better, to improve, right? So, that's very important to consider as well, is that never see things on the surface level. You don't know what is going on beneath the surface of life. Maybe people opted into certain circumstances for a reason, and it doesn't help you. You can't get sick enough to make somebody else well. You can't suffer enough to make somebody else not suffer. It doesn't work that way. And you end up finding this bottomless pit of people who are suffering. And you're trying to make everybody fair. And, in doing so, it creates a whole other can of worms that we don't want in our society. So just remember that if you're Libran, or if you're dealing with a Libran, try to convince them you can improve society, but just don't suffer when you see inequality and think that, you can just make everything balanced. Sometimes imbalances, to me, are, organic and okay, and we have to live within the imbalance and just learn to deal. That's what I'm getting down to. The other thing, too, is with Librans, is living too much in the mind. Talking about love, but do they feel it in the heart chakra? Do they really feel it? There can be a lot of abstract thought. And so for people who are dealing with Librans, you may feel like everything is over intellectualized and talked to death. And that may be a problem. So you may try to, if you want to kind of engage your partner, your Libran partner, try to ask them about things that might bring up strong emotions. Like, what was the thing that happened when you were a child that really, was the most traumatic thing? And get them to kind of feel things. And maybe, they can get beyond just classifying things and hiding behind the mind to talk about their lives, or to go about their lives. So anyway, I hope that all of you enjoyed this and have a wonderful 2017. Take care. Bye.